Welcome to another episode of Merritt in the Morning. It's 59. It's the 59th episode of Merritt in the Morning. I'm Jim Merritt. I served a little time in the State House, 3 decades, in fact, and we've done 58 episodes with Brad Klopfenstein. He is the president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce, and he has a pile of work today on his desk and wasn't able to be here today. As you know, we've got 2 sponsors. One is Stockyards Bank, and the other one is Honey Baked Ham. And Josh, where are the locations?
Sure, Jim. Stockyards Bank and Trust is located at Binford, Carmel, downtown location, Plainfield, Greenwood, Center Grove, and coming soon to Zionsville.
Yeah, they are growing. And, you know, the great part about Stockyards, other than the people there, is the community bank is starting to fall away. A lot of banks are not having branch banking, and they're in lots of communities. And Paul Moan, thank you very much for the sponsorship. And we all know Honey Baked Ham. We all know how much I like their mustard, their honey mustard. And their location is in Carmel, really, Hamilton County, at 96 and Michigan Road, as well as up by the Menards, and they're right there at on Greyhound Pass Road. And thank you very much, Calb family, for being a longtime sponsor of ours. We have as our guest today, Catherine Michael. And when I was in the legislature, I wrote legislation that I thought the term handicap was something that was demeaning, and I felt as though that it really did not describe persons with disabilities. And it goes back to the term of handicap, where those that were disabled were sitting in the street or sitting on the sidewalk with their cap and their hand out. And that's where handicap came from. And so I've admired Catherine Michael's work with helping families that may have a disabled child, may need representation, because you can't really scroll the internet anymore, where a child is harmed in schools or a child is a victim of a school shooting, and it's sad. But I think we need to talk more about it. And Josh Gillespie, thank you for being here today with being the producer. And Catherine, you've been at it for a while. It doesn't look like it, but you've been a lawyer for 25 years. And this is a unique practice of law. And you live in Carmel, Indiana. Your law firm is Connell, not Connell, Connell Michael. And but talk about what happened 25 years ago that kind of directed you toward this type of practice of law that most people don't know about.
Yeah. Well, my background was in healthcare law. You and I have talked in the past about how I was in hospital risk management. My focus was initially on helping hospitals be better. And yet we started seeing cases that were really disturbing. Children with cancer who weren't getting services, children who had autism that weren't being found eligible for special education. And I realized there's this area that was completely underserved. And these families were really struggling to navigate a system that should have been easier. And so that was part of what sort of drew me into this field. And I took 1 or 2 cases, and then it snowballed. And I realized there were so few people doing it, because it does have to be a labor of love in a lot of respects. But there were so few people practicing in this area, and there was so much help needed, that it really fit my goals and my driven purpose in life.
And if I picked up the Indianapolis Star one day, and there was a long interview that you won a case, and I'm sure you win a lot of cases, but tell our audience a little bit about the bigger cases that they may be aware of.
Yeah,
and how you operate in that area.
Yeah, so there are different types of cases that I take. So the first one, when we're talking about children who have special needs, what most parents in Indiana don't realize is the amount of rights they have under a federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and our Indiana's Article 7. And so a lot of the cases that we've been successful on have been under those laws. And these are not things that to the general public, I think, that we think would be complicated. A lot of them involve whether a child needs to, for instance, be in a residential placement. Shockingly, and most people don't know this, school systems can actually pay for these through an excess costs fund that we have from the state. So if a child has schizophrenia and you can only get short-term stays through your health insurance, our state in Indiana actually will provide that. There are many cases in where a child,
Interrupt. Short-term stays. Where?
So short-term stays, most hospitals are only doing like 30 to 60 days. So they're
Okay, so it's actually in a hospital.
No, so
setting.
that's what your insurance will cover.
Okay.
What our state covers through the education system, and this is both under federal and state law, are the long-term residential educational placements, which can be 1 or 2 years if a child cannot be educated in the school system. And these placements are everywhere. They're all over the U.S.
Really?
But
So what's an example of a placement? Where would you place a child that would get the care and the education that they so need and desire?
Okay, so there are, for instance, there's a place called Heart Spring in Kansas. That's one of my favorites, but they have a really long waiting list. So if you have a child who's extraordinarily cognitively impaired, plus they tend to be aggressive, they have trouble with communication, Heart Spring does a remarkable job of basically taking that child, teaching them communication skills, and helping them get to a level that they can be returned to the school system with communication devices, with training for school staff on how to deal with a child with this level of need. There are so many other
Are there places in Indiana?
There aren't many in Indiana. In Indiana, we have a real shortage.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And part of that is because it really does, you need these specialized services. We have a lot of services for children. For instance, we have Daymar in Indianapolis. We have T.C. Harris, but there's an IQ cutoff. So often, if you have a child who has an IQ, let's say they're an IQ of 80, but they're struggling in other areas, they're not going to qualify for either of those placements.
Well, Daymar is actually a sponsor of State House Happenings.
Yeah.
And they do a really good job.
They do a fantastic job, and they serve a lot of the population that have extraordinary cognitive impairments. But then when we look at some of the other mental health impairments, or we look at speech impediments that are so significant that for instance, a nonverbal child, that's where we can start to look at some of the other options.
And what gets you up in the morning? You seem like a really busy gal. It took us 6 months to schedule this interview.
What gets me up in the morning is
other than coffee.
Other than coffee, and I'm having coffee right now. But I really do like my clients. Now that is something that I think most lawyers, and this, for people who have a lawyer, I think they probably do like you. But most lawyers aren't going to come out and say, I love my clients. I do this because the level of gratitude and the level of change that I can see in their lives has kept me going.
What does success look like to you?
Well, I'll give you an example. I have a case going to hearing next week. I mentioned this to you. It is up in Larful, Indiana, very, very small town. That case will be open to the public. So if anyone wants to come and watch, that case involves a child with autism, sensory issues, speech issues, communication issues. He also has a specific learning disability in math, and we're trying to get him eligible for special education, which in our state should not be very complicated. The standard for that type of thing is, does the child have a disability, and does that have an adverse effect on the child in education?
Who makes that decision? About if a child is eligible for disability education?
It's a case conference committee. So for parents who have children on IEPs, what's supposed to happen is you get an evaluation and you go in and you look at all of the data. In most places in our state, these are not things that need a lot of debate. I think we could all probably agree that if you and I are sitting here today, is autism a disability? Probably. I think most of us would agree that's correct. Does having autism and having a learning disability affect you in school? I think the answer is usually yes. However, what I think a lot of your listeners or watchers don't necessarily understand is what can happen is that schools often have insurance for these types of cases. So sometimes they would just rather say, what we said is what goes, and they will spend somewhere upwards of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 of what ends up being taxpayer dollars fighting cases in which they would actually get more money from the state.
And so when the test comes where it's decided if a child is autistic or has some sort of disability and reaches that level, that section where they deserve and they need extra education, they need. I had a friend who was a special education teacher in Fishers, and there were 11 children, but 7 teachers in the classroom. And let's just say the school corporation says, no, this person can thrive in the ordinary, stream of the classroom, but the teachers or the parents don't think so. Is that where you come involved?
Yes and no, but special education isn't a room anymore, right? So if a child is qualified, that does not mean they go to a special education room.
Okay.
So everyone needs to understand that if your child gets qualified, that just means that there are going to be some extra services put in place. Those extra services can be a reduction of math homework. It can be some additional tutoring during the school day. It can be getting a copy of study notes. It can be counseling services available through the school. It actually can give that teacher more resources. One of my biggest referral sources, and who I mostly represent, are the parents who seem to know the laws, are the teachers. So we have a lot of teacher clients.
I see.
Our case next week, the parents are 2 teachers. So that's,
So what's when you come involved, what is the basis of a lawsuit? Or is it just representation to an entity, or where do you come in?
So, and it can vary depending on the case. Okay, so the one I'm talking about right now, I come in because the school has said we are refusing to make this child eligible and to provide them an IEP.
Okay. And what is an IEP?
An IEP is an individualized education plan, and it is required for any child, and a parent would have to agree to it, but it's required for any child who has disabilities, and the state actually has a duty, it's called Child Find, to identify these children, to offer parents evaluations, and to provide these special services. I mean, part of it, I think this is why we're struggling with reading right now in Indiana, and why we've started to say we need reading tests, is that we want these kids to be getting the services they need to advance. We want a good taxpayer base, right?
Of course.
If you've got a child with dyslexia,
Opportunity for service.
yes. And a lot of most of the things that I ask for are fairly inexpensive. That, I think, is another misnomer in the areas that I do in education, is that parents are coming in and asking for these extraordinarily expensive programs. Most of the cases that we take are parents asking for assistance for their child to learn reading, to learn math, to get their child eligible for special education. And
they'll file a lawsuit, or you'll file a lawsuit.
An action.
Action.
Yeah, it's an administrative action. So we'll file it. And there are many phenomenal school districts in our state, and there are many good law firms that will get in, explain the law to the school, help guide through, and 99% of those get resolved. But what gets me up in the morning is that 1% too, that I see that if we don't get involved and our firm doesn't get involved, that child is going to fall through the cracks. And most parents can't afford attorney's fees, as you might imagine. Thankfully, under state and federal law, if a parent succeeds in changing the legal relationship of the parties, in other words, a child becomes eligible, a child gets reading goals.
You're successful in putting your point of view across.
Then the school districts have to pay for the parents' attorney's fees. So that allows us to really cherry pick cases, and for me to tell someone, I think we can do good in your case. If I don't think we can do good, we're just not going to take the case. And we have the advantage of there are not many people who do this. And so that has been a tremendous, the ability to cherry pick and see the change has been one of those things where and I think every lawyer wants this, that you see someone's life is different as a result.
Well, yeah, obviously it's a public service, and if there aren't that many law firms that specialize in this, that makes you all the more valuable. There's no question about it whatsoever. We always, during the mid part of the program, we always recognize our sponsors, and Josh?
Yes, sir. Well, let's recognize Honey Baked Ham first.
They're in Carmel. They're in Hamilton County. Some people say Westfield, but 96 in Michigan. Honey Baked Ham, and as well as above the Menards on Greyhound Pass Road in Carmel, Westfield.
Yep.
As well as Stockyards Bank and
Stockyards Bank and Trust. Oh man, their locations are at Binford 71st in Carmel, in downtown Indianapolis, Plainfield, Greenwood, Center Grove, and coming soon to Zionsville.
Yeah, they're I see the place that they're picked for the bank branch, and they're doing a great job. They're out of Louisville, and it's just a really growing bank that's not Chase or any other, and great people. I have a bank account there, and they served me well. Let's talk about something that catches the headlines of the Indianapolis Star and all the different places around the country, and the sad idea and the sad situation and the tragedy that happens with school shootings, and how your law firm works in that horror.
So we not only do the education end where we're helping parents with educational based issues like IEPs or 504 plans. We represent children who have been injured in schools, daycares. It's very child focused.
Yeah, so they've been harmed.
They've been harmed. And I will say from when I started 25 years ago to now, the level of violence in schools has skyrocketed. I think it's something.
It's not just school shootings either.
Right. It's bullying cases that we get. It's violent bullying cases. It is cyberbullying cases. And we're also seeing the rise in teacher abuse of students has skyrocketed. I mean, I remember, 20 years ago, we saw these cases, right? It's not like this all of a sudden happened at once. But part of it, I think, is the changes we've had in education. We have more teachers than ever that are just on emergency licenses that don't have a lot of background. They don't have a lot of training. And frankly, they're not getting a lot of support from administrators. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. So we have that component. And then we have children.
Let's start.
Yeah.
When a child is harmed.
Yes.
And the everybody from the school board to the administration of the school to the principal to the teacher, they all are human. Right. And how does one go as a lawyer representing a student that's been bullied, and there might not be any proof, and it's the child's, it's the child's say, it's their opinion, it's their position against another student. That has to be a really delicate situation.
Yes.
How do you play a role?
So normally the cases we take, your viewers would probably look at them in a state of shock because it's often not a he said, she said. It's often videos of a child being raped on a school bus after being assaulted. And so I know we're talking about bullying, but the cases that we're seeing in bullying, okay, we're not taking unfortunately, I don't have the capacity. As you know, I can't even get here on a Wednesday or Thursday morning for 6 months, okay?
Well, we're talking about kids being harmed.
My husband is like up in arms about the fact that, we don't have a lot of family dinners. But the cases that we're seeing on bullying and the cases that we have are awful. And that brings me sort of back to shooting and some of the school violence we're seeing. And I'm going to send you a copy of a book that we found was recently assigned in one of our schools called Shooter. And it was about a kid who wanted to go into his school and shoot up the school. And he then killed himself at the end of the book. If we're assigning books like this, and I'm not an anti-book person, Okay, there are people out there that really want to be very careful with the books. Libraries exist to provide everything. There's a difference between that and assigning books for students to read about violence. But our problem is not only that type of thing. Our students are stressed out at unbelievable levels. I think you saw that I had recently traveled and was interviewing people in Denmark and Norway and looking at the comparison of the educational systems, because we're really faltering. Our students are stressed out because of the amount of homework they have, the demands they have, and what's happening is we're not pushing our students ahead, we're creating pressure cookers within the school system. You add that to social media, you add the burnout of teachers who have these massive classes, and we're really creating a system where it's not unexpected we're going to see violence.
It seems like, and the parents, God love them, they're trying to earn a salary,
Right.
Trying to have dinner with their families, trying to get homework finished. I can see why there's so much stress and anxiety and pressure inside the house these days, and everybody's mental health is probably on watch.
Yes.
And so you're feeling and you're witnessing that this is really fulminating in schools.
And I can say, I mean, my perception is what we're doing is not working. Our kids' test scores are falling back to where they were in the 90s. So we're not making gains in reading. We're not making gains in math. And our kids are more stressed out than they've ever been.
Now, when COVID came along,
I don't blame COVID for this.
Yeah, but there are lessons learned because
Yes.
kids went home
Yes.
and they had to learn at home, and it was a totally different situation. Their mental health, their reading
Yes.
abilities, and a lot of things went on in the home.
Yes
and I'm
and
sure
no.
your practice, I don't want to say flourish because that's a positive word, but it probably grew at 2020 and on, the last 5 years or so.
Amusingly.
What's the lesson learned?
Well,
from
okay,
the last 5
here's
years?
what I will tell you is remarkable about COVID. The kids actually seemed less stressed. We had less bullying cases, and schools learned how to do good online programs. The fact that the children didn't catch up, there are all sorts of studies out there that say, for instance, if we don't teach something for 6 months, and Sylvan Learning Academy is a good example, right? You can actually have a child catch up lessons missed fairly quickly, right? They sell it in 59-hour sequences, and you will see children jump a grade level. The problem wasn't that our children were out of school. It certainly could have been done better, right? There's a lot of debates as to what we could have done better. But we are now 4 years out of that. We can't now blame, right? We've had 4 years to catch up. We had 4 years that we could have offered great summer programming for students. We could have been analyzing what are their needs. And this not only goes to Indiana, it goes to the US. The problem is bigger than what we experienced during COVID. The problem is that we had a model that maybe once worked in a different world. It doesn't work now. And so that's why we're having a school shooting a week. I think we're seeing, again, really horrible cases. And I think we don't have a lot of support for our teachers. A teacher who assigns that book I was talking about called The Shooter, and I'll send you some information on that because we do have a suit filed on that case. That child, there was a child that it had been assigned to who already had severe mental health issues, ended up having to get hospitalized, all sorts of things. But there are things that we can look at now and say, how can we change this? If what we've always done now isn't working, what changes do we need to make? Do we need to make for our teachers, and do we need to make for our students? And
on a rapid round here, you've been practicing law for 25 years. Your law practice has changed, and tell our audience exactly, maybe 3 or 4 lessons learned that you think could improve the condition, the experience that kids could have at school. We obviously, raping a student on a school bus is totally gross, and it's unacceptable. It's horrific. That's obviously number one on harming students, but how can we make schools more safe for a student, for a child?
So I'm going to start with the school bus and I'll go through the school day. On school buses, if you as a parent have walked on one of these, you have the bus driver and you sometimes have 20 to 50 students of all different ages. There's no bus monitors. We really need to step up. As parents, when we drive even 15 kids in multiple vans, I mean, as parents, we act with a little bit more caution generally. That needs to go into schools. The second thing is during the school day, we've got to release the burden on some of these teachers and be getting them into training. We are losing good teachers every single day.
It's a stressful anxiety. It's a very difficult world they have.
It went from being a job in which they felt autonomy and that they could be doing something good, saying the same things I'm saying, I feel like I'm doing good, into one in which they feel like they can't talk to parents about things, they can't advocate for children, they can't discipline. A lot of them don't know how to discipline necessarily.
And they're really, for all practical purposes, they've been foisted upon as the parent inside a building.
Yes.
That's more than just learning.
Yes, and they don't have the training or support to do that, right? And then because we don't necessarily provide them the training or support, what some teachers, especially the younger teachers, will do is just assign lots of homework. But we're not looking, what is our end goal? Our end goal is to have a group of independent children who become adults. They need to be able to read. They need to be able to fill out a job application. They need to be able to do basic math. Okay, I mean, we can all talk about science, social studies, history, art, everything else, but if we're failing on the core basic duty, then we've got problems. And so and we know we are, right? We don't want to talk about it, but we are.
We are.
And so that's where I come back to, what do we need to do to fix that? We probably need to have multiple different reading classes for children performing at the lower end, the higher end, the medium end. We need to change to a mastery-based program in some of this.
So what does that mean?
That means if we have a third grader who's reading at a 7th grade level, then they need to be in a 7th grade level reading class. If we have a third grader who's reading at a kindergarten level, then they need to be in a kindergarten reading level class. Because what happens is that teacher who has 30 students is now the ones who have mastered all of this are bored out of their minds. They're talking to each other. That teacher is then trying to help the children who are really, really struggling while she can't or he can't address the kids in the middle. And I mean, this would be the equivalent of having a dinner party at your house and you're trying to prepare one lasagna only to find out that there are vegetarians, there are vegans, there are people who can't eat gluten.
That's a great metaphor.
Yes. And so, of course, there's the tomato allergy, okay? So you're trying to do this one thing. And it's no wonder they're like, I can't do this job. Right? Nobody would want to do it. Whereas if we had someone who was teaching reading at, let's just say, a kindergarten level, regardless of the age, then they're not going to be frustrated because it is tailored to those children.
You know, when you get home at night and you're having dinner with your husband, are there times you just think, I just don't want to do this anymore?
Yes. Yes. Now, the thing is...
That's with any job.
But let me tell you what those moments are. It's not the horrible cases. And most people, when they see me, they will think of the daycare molestation case, because I have a bunch of clients who had, unfortunately, that situation. Or, there are cases where we have, these are the worst, but where a child is killed in a school or a camp environment. Those are hard psychologically. But the thing that really I think is the hardest for me are the simple cases where I see parents have to fight for almost the most small things. These are families who, again, just want a child to learn to read, or a situation like I have next week, they just want a child to have an IEP that has some goals and maybe a few services. That's where it gets frustrating, because at those moments you just want to throw up your hands and say, if this is what we have to fight over, and this is where our state is choosing to spend its taxpayer dollars, is fighting parents on the rights that, as the legislature wrote these rights for parents, and that we're going to see money be expended to fight them, to not give them access to these basic rights, those are the moments where it is hard.
When I many times when I was in the legislature, I would be getting home, and there would be frustration because of everything that goes on in politics. But there are other times that, I would get a feeling, somebody sent me a terrible email, and I would print it, and then I'd knock on their door on my way home from work, and they had misunderstood my position on the issue. And when I got home, I felt like I hadn't kicked the can down the alley. I actually felt good that I'd done something. It was an opportunity for service, and somebody actually understood my position on the issue, and I in my mind I had corrected a wrong. When you get home, I always like to finish our Merritt in the morning, and this is the 59th. I like to finish it on a positive stance. And when you get home and you're having dinner with your husband, and you say, "This is why I do this," give our listeners and our everybody on Facebook and all of our watchers, our loyal audience, a success story that you said, "This is why I do this."
Oh, there are so many. I would say when I'm getting cards from children who are now in college, when I'm hearing from parents on Christmas, I still go and I will have all these deliveries of, someone would have made cookies or ordered things, or the number of cards saying, "Thank you for making a change in my child's life. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for taking my case." You open card after card after card, and then that is what really on those days
that makes you feel good.
Makes you feel good and makes you feel that what you're doing is worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes out to all the teachers out there too, is that between the parents and the teachers, we've got to keep up this campaign of things need to change in education for the benefit of everyone. Because I know that many of our teachers aren't hearing as much of the thanks as they are deserving of, because again, it's like you've served the lasagna and you're like, why is nobody saying, "Thank you for getting me dinner"? Yeah. So thank you to all the teachers out there. Thank you for what you're doing. I hope that some of what I'm doing is actually helping get more training, more support, more awareness, and hopefully even more funds into our education system.
We've uncovered a lot here. Where can people learn more about what you do in your law firm? And it's chock full of information. What is your website?
So our website is www. I guess everybody says
World
that.
Wide Web.
It's ConnellMichaelLaw.com. And they can also Google search my name, Catherine Michael, and our firm name should come right up. We take cases in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Texas. Wow. So I get to see a very wide spectrum.
There's a lot of codes to study on that. Indiana code, a lot of law.
Yes, but
and you practice in all those
very
things.
Similar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And well, we very much appreciate you being here. And Josh, rattle off that Stockyards Bank and Trust list again of all the branches.
Absolutely. The branches are located at Binford and 71st, near there, Carmel, downtown Indianapolis, Plainfield, Greenwood, Center Grove, and coming soon to Zionsville.
Thank you very much. What a great group of people at Stockyards Bank and Trust. And also Honey Baked Ham, the Kalb family. Thank you very much. You walk in there either at 96 in Michigan, and I have a favorite sandwich, and they know what it is, or at Grand Hal Pass Road in Carmel, Westfield area, near the Menards. And we very much appreciate our sponsors for the 59th episode. And Brad Klopfenstein, thank you very much for the previous 58 and for the next 58. And he had a lot of work to do today, and very much appreciate his being a co-host. And also Josh Gillespie, our producer today. You've been watching the 59th episode of Merritt in the Morning.
1, 2,